Okay, we're going to talk about the Kota Ibushi situation. There are so many levels to this, okay? And it started this week with Kota Ibushi. Of course, New Japan Pro Wrestling superstar, who this week was tweeting out stuff about a New Japan official named Kikuchi. He started leaking DMs from Line, which is a messaging service that's very big in Japan, showing off a very contentious relationship between the two, where Ibushi seems to imply that Kikuchi has been unfairly keeping him off television shows, period, because of medical conditions, and maybe other, Ibushi's been talking about maybe some other unsavory stuff as well. This has been quite the story, and it's been covered live on Twitter and also over at the Flagship Podcast, basically through translations that were provided by Twitter user golden_kuma and another Twitter user called the Feelite. We're able to get a picture of what seems to corroborate what Kota Ibushi is talking about. So I'm going to mush all of this together to try and paint a picture, because I know a lot of people, like, I had people DM me, I was like, what's going on with Kota Ibushi? And I'm like, Jesus, it's such a tangled tale. And the links are all in the description, by the way, to follow all of these people. And I think it's important because they did do fantastic work on this. What I'm going to do here is use the social media timeline that was put together by Twitter user the Feelite over on their website, vendingmachineseat.com, and also the deep reporting that the boys over at the Flagship Podcast did that's on their Patreon. Now, the first few elements here that we're going to talk about come directly from the Voices of Wrestling Flagship Podcast report, where they were reporting that there is massive heat between Kota Ibushi and Kikuchi. This heat has been going back several years. They say it started around 2018 when Ibushi alleged that Kikuchi, who no one had heard about, right, at this point, like, really, you never heard this guy being thrown around, but oh boy, he's in the vernacular now. Kikuchi, back in 2018, Ibushi feels that he was shorting him on merch money, because Kikuchi was running the merch back then. Ibushi said that he wasn't being paid the amount of royalties that were promised. And at the time, Kikuchi would say, "Oh, I'm sorry, bro, mistake." Let's skip over to 2019. Kikuchi's New Japan contract expired, and it was not renewed under former President CEO Harold Mage due to what was believed to be a mishandling of the Ibushi merchandise issue, plus multiple extramarital affairs that were brought to the company's attention by Kikuchi's wife. Kikuchi then took a job writing and producing wrestling content over at TV Asahi. Now, you may recall Taka Michinoku around 2018, if I'm not mistaken. He was tossed out of New Japan Pro Wrestling because it was shown that he was having an extramarital affair, and he was also kicked out of the promotion that he was running at the time as well. Culturally, adultery is quite severe in Japan. It's something that that they take very, very seriously, and is a very embarrassing blemish. It's not something that you want out there. So it's a big deal, and it's important that we get this focused here, because it does come to play in a couple of situations here. So let's keep that in mind. Extramarital affairs equal not good things in Japan. You get canceled, for use of a better term. Tiger Hattori, right, former referee, had also held talent relations positions in New Japan until he retired in 2020, and that's when Dick Togo arrived to take over those duties. Our boy Dick Togo gained more influence. He's a pal with Gato, so he had had the ear for the booking committee as well. And he pushed to bring his buddies back into the fold, such as Kikuchi and Taka Michinoku, who had been fired at that point. When Harold Meij left New Japan in 2022, the table was indeed set for Kikuchi to return to talent relations. Now, Kikuchi had a reputation, as it's stated in the flagship report, said for being exploitative, unfair, and very quote-unquote old school. I'll give you some examples here. He was very strict about maintaining kayfabe, to the point that he didn't want wrestlers from various units, face, heel, Hantai, Bullet Club, if you were in a war, he didn't want you guys to be seen in public with each other. Apparently he even once got on Ibushi's case for spotting a bench press for a heel wrestler in a public gym. So Ibushi got a little bit in trouble for that. Kikuchi is also very strict in regards to the younger staff. I've heard this before, but I mean, this is old school. The younger wrestlers wants them to, keep their relationships on the down low so that the female fans will still continue to think they're single and will buy the merch and, that kind of stuff. Those are old school. Both of these things are very old school style mentalities. So sources told the flagship that these policies that Kikuchi has are kind of enforced willy-nilly, where he's kind of like, well, he'll maybe turn a blind eye to a heel and a babyface out in public, but he'll be on another guy's case probably just because he doesn't like him, kind of thing. But he has this reputation as well to be, well, like we said, unfair. A few weeks before heading into Wrestle Grand Slam last July, Ibushi got sick, right? He had aspiration pneumonia. I'm pretty sure anyone who was following New Japan at the time were, including myself, were very worried because we were right in the midst of, COVID bullshit. And we were like, oh, okay, well, maybe, hopefully that's all it is. We were hoping it wasn't anything more serious and they were just using this as a cover. And besides, having respiratory problems when you're in the era of COVID, not a good mix regardless. But the office wanted him, but Ibushi told the office he wanted to wrestle against Shingo in the main event at Wrestle Grand Slam nonetheless. Kikuchi made the call to not allow him to wrestle based on not being medically cleared. Now, Ibushi thought that this was another example of his unfairness because 6 months later, Kikuchi lets Katsuyori Shibata return at Wrestle Kingdom, but without Shibata ever really being fully cleared by doctors. And I did a bit of research going back on this. Maybe, I got blinded by my excitement of Shibata being back, where I'm like, wait, he had to have been cleared. And I searched, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find any report. I couldn't find anything from New Japan or any rumors, any news sites saying Katsuyori Shibata medically cleared for competition. Even Dave Meltzer, in a report at some point said, I think it was in an Observer, saying Shibata's wrestling at Wrestle Kingdom, but we don't know what his medical status is. We just don't know. So kind of weird, right? So Ibushi sort of saw that, and then he injured his shoulder in the G1 in October, and then New Japan announces that he's going to be out for 2 months. Now I'm going to come to the tweet timeline, because the tweets and the reports sort of mesh together here. Following the G1 final where he hurt his shoulder, he tweeted this out. Now, these are translations from Japanese, so maybe some words are a little broken, sentences are a little strange, but these are all translated from native speakers, doing their best to make it make sense here. But there's still some nuance, they admitted themselves, there's some moments where the nuance isn't quite clear. So Ibushi tweets this after being injured in the G1 finals. He says, as the announcement of the results of the examination says, it was a dislocation of the right anterior shoulder joint, bone fracture, and damage to the joint labrum or labrum. Apologies, I don't know how to pronounce that specific word. This time, I'm going to do this without an operation and heal as soon as possible, but without hurry, and fight in front of everyone again. A dislocation and bone fracture will take 2 months to heal, so my time is limited, but look forward to a new and changed Ibushi Kota. I won't give up. Now, off of that, let's go back to the Flagship report, who around this period have a note here. They say they add to this, or at least I add to this through their report. Kikuchi told Ibushi that he needed to get back in time for Wrestle Kingdom. Ibushi didn't want to wrestle until the shoulder was fully healed. Gedo, who is of course the booker, was so sure that Ibushi would be able to wrestle at Wrestle Kingdom that he booked an angle to set up the match, but mid-December, Ibushi still wasn't ready to go, so he had to cancel. He had to cancel the angle, right? Now let's go back to Ibushi's social media, specifically his Instagram. We're going a couple of months later. We're heading into February 2021. Pretty big difference. This is Ibushi's post. Pretty big difference between the left and right shoulder. I wonder if this is the reason why the pain won't go away quite yet. Hashtag road to recovery. Hashtag still can't lift weights. Hashtag going to let things heal completely. Hashtag control your narrative. No, I'm kidding. So he's tweeting this out on the 29th, basically saying, my shoulder's not there yet, right? Now this is on February 20th. On the 21st, New Japan Pro Wrestling announces that Ibushi is a participant in the New Japan Cup. We all lose our shit. This is great news. In which he's going to start off against Great O'Khan in the first round on March 6th. Right? And we're like, what? That's fantastic shit. Shortly after that announcement, Kota Ibushi tweets out, no context, I see. Now, there was a lot of speculation, and on my part as well, that, break in communication, left hand not talking to the right hand kind of thing. That's what made the most sense, right? Or we're getting worked. It's pro wrestling, right? Maybe we're getting worked. Because, the wrestlers, they keep kayfabe on, in Japan, there's still a level of kayfabe that exists, They don't talk about backstage politics. They don't bring up other, there's still a level of, there's still a curtain of sorts. So let's go back. Here's some observations that came from the Timeline article. It should be mentioned that between the statement about his dislocation and the announcement of his in-ring return by New Japan, there was never an official statement correcting the recovery time, which by February had long since passed the original prognosis. Kota Ibushi had said 2 months and I'm back. We're into February and he's not back. Now we're getting into things that are a little dicey here. Here's some stuff off of the Timeline here. A week after the announcement of Ibushi's in-ring return, New Japan retracts it and states that Ibushi's return has been postponed for the time being. In the statement on their website, it is said that the original announcement of his participation was made in accordance with, quote, strong wishes of Ibushi himself, and that he was, quote, on the route to a timely recovery at first. But the decision to not let him participate, after all, came, quote, after repeated discussions with hospital and medical staff, and that the New Japan staff, quote, informed Ibushi of this decision. So, it was the office, using medical, right, evidence, and plus Ibushi was like, nah, I don't think this is a good idea. Now, if we go into the Flagship's report, there's a little conflict here. Not quite exactly the same thing here. If we peel back the curtain, the story doesn't exactly follow. Here's from the Flagship report. 2 months previous, Ibushi told the office he was feeling good and ready for the New Japan Cup. Wait, which is odd because New Japan said that Ibushi said that, no, I'd prefer not to be in there. Oh, okay. Gedo not only booked him for the tour, but Ibushi was also the planned winner. I talked about this months ago, leading up to the Cup, when there was some stuff that was starting to leak out of New Japan. Ibushi was supposed to win the damn thing. Kikuchi, here we go, on the advice of a doctor who raised what was described to be a minor concern, pulled Ibushi from the tour. This infuriated Ibushi, who cut off, and this is key, cut off all communication with the New Japan office. He stopped speaking to everyone. He's like, nah, I'm done, son. We're good. Now, this part here, so New Japan is tweeting out that medical evidence and, Ibushi himself, he doesn't want to do it, so on and so forth. Whereas here, we're being told he was good to go. Gedo had booked him to win. There was a minor thing on the medical report that Kikuchi was like, nah, hit the bricks, pal. Ibushi's mad as hell. Hope y'all are following. This is fascinating stuff. Now, bear with me. There's a tweet that followed that seems to corroborate what the Flagship is saying the day that New Japan announced that he was being removed, okay? Here's the tweet. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm really sorry. About my return, it's been like this since last year, but there is only one thing I want to say. There's so much I want to say, but I can't. I never intended for anything like this to happen. Your only friend is yourself. So that kind of jives with someone who was told he could wrestle, told he could be booked, but then once again was yanked around by this one guy who doesn't want him to work. Let's keep going. On March 4, Kota Ibushi is seen at a JTO show. Just Tap Out. It's Taka Michinoku's new promotion, right? Social media in Japan gets a buzz at the time, because he's there. I think he accompanied like Taka Michinoku to the ring or something like that. And some fans got worried because, right, kayfabe. It's generally not allowed for New Japan talent to appear on other promotions unless they have special permission to do so. Let's go over to let's go over to the Flagship report. Right? Guess what? Kikuchi breaks his silence and texts Ibushi, right? Because Ibushi had cut all communications. No one spoke to him. Kikuchi texts him, tells Ibushi about the appearance at the JTO show, and with the ultimatum to return by Dominion or be fired. Let's go back to the timeline. Is this what prompted him to tweet? Let's think about it. Because the day after the JTO show, he tweets this out. Quote, "So this is how pathetic this place is. It's just unfortunate. Sucks." Unquote. Kikuchi texts him, and the day after the JTO show, he puts this out. conjecture, right? But things are falling into place here. The dots are being connected. On March 16th, this is still on the timeline, he has a back and forth in kayfabe with the Great Okan, but he tweets, and it's in kayfabe, right? Because, they were supposed to be in the first round. They were supposed to be in the first round of the New Japan Cup and so on. But it's a kayfabe thing. But Ibushi tweets this out. Freedom over boring control. I'm going to end all the one or things I don't need. Fold your hands in prayer. Kneeling down or quitting? So which one is going to stop? One day I'll let everyone know. Right now I'm putting my all into recovering. 65%. I'm going to work hard for just a little bit longer. Hashtag what you do comes back to you. Hashtag you screwed up again. Now, there are numerous other tweets in this back and forth with, and he has a back and forth with Taka Michinoku as well. Talks about cutting out the people he doesn't need from his life, okay? Then on April 28, he tweets this out. Quote, the next step soon. Secretly maneuvering is scary, and so are the people who do that. One day, I'll spit out, in a metaphorical sense, everything. Now, to this point, at this point here, there's still no real reason to believe this isn't a work, okay? There's no reason to think that this is not all like some big machination. He starts referring to retirement as well when responding to fans asking where he's been. He's like, oh, maybe I'm retired. Maybe I'm going to retire. We get two tweets. One, a response to a fan saying, destroying isn't good, but I don't want to take the power harassment in a place where there is an ex-cheater gang and bosses who used to sexually harass people. Now this is getting serious. This is getting a little dark. This is where we're sort of looking at this and like, is this really a work? Because this is getting serious. Sexual harassment, that's nuts. Power harassment is actually a thing in Japan. It's a corporate problem in many companies in Japan where people in authority will use their authority to have their underlings work harder, work more, make them feel bad about the work that they're putting in. And I know like there's a word in Japanese for that. So he's talking about he's putting up very serious allegations, power harassment and sexually harassment. Excuse me. And there's another tweet that in response to a fan where he says, I'm going to blow up in one go the ex-cheater gang, already returned, and the absurd power harassment stemming from the long lies of the company's head. Roll up your sleeves, Tokyo Sports and TV Asahi too. I don't care. Now, he's talking about the cheater gang, right? As I talked about, with adultery, extramarital affairs, it's a big deal in Japan. Taka Michinoku had one. And gets you thinking, who is this gang? Who is this gang? Well, he sort of implied that Kikuchi might be in that gang. He could also be talking about Taichi, who was caught cheating as well, which some people seem to think that is a reason why he was never pushed really into the main event picture. As you can tell, time heals all wounds because he's doing pretty well for himself. But, Hiroshi Tanahashi, like 2 decades ago, right? He got stabbed by his ex-girlfriend because she found out, there's stuff. Yeah. Who is the gang he's talking about, essentially? He could be talking about Kikuchi. And this is where Kikuchi becomes a part of the conversation on the day Ibushi started dumping private DMs on Twitter. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing, like the whole translated conversation, the back and forth between them two. the tweets and everything, and visit the websites that I've linked in the description as well, because they've got everything covered on that front. But it looks like Kikuchi was DMing Ibushi about wanting his contract canceled, and Ibushi hitting the bricks. And of course, but Ibushi going, okay, sure, whatever. That's his response. Then later, that's the first DM dump. Then Ibushi later dumps another DM that indirectly references the JTO show, and Kikuchi is scolding him for not getting company permission beforehand. But Ibushi seems to be saying that Kikuchi is trying to move the conversation away than what started it, which is the contract situation, getting your contract canceled, which I believe are the DMs that we spoke of earlier when we were talking about Kikuchi reaching out to Ibushi after, the radio silence. Ibushi says he's going to the higher ups, right? Then later in a DM tweet, he says in the tweet, the entire text didn't fit, but I said I talked to the higher ups. They didn't tell me anything about what I did was wrong. We're thinking that this is the JTO show, right? That the higher ups in New Japan were like, well, we don't give a shit. If you're going to apologize, and he's talking to Kikuchi here, if you're going to apologize, don't say it to begin with. Talk to me one-on-one. Also, there is the shithead mastermind president who thought to calm me down with yakiniku because I had gotten angry. He nodded as though he knew what the America thing was about, and when he finally asked questions, he just repeatedly yelled, do you understand? Do you know? Do you understand? And I think we're talking about the Forbidden Door show here, where he sits down with the higher ups, with the president, the shithead mastermind president, as he called him, and the president was like, he thought that Ibushi thought that he was offering him up the Forbidden Door show as a way to calm him down, right? But this is speculation. In the DM, Kikuchi seems to be repentant, or at least backtracking when he's saying, aren't we friends who have gone through hard times together, right? Ibushi responds, anyway, I talked to Gedo, and I talked to Gedo, and yesterday didn't come up at all. Again, we're probably talking about the JTO show. And he said it was no issue at all. I won't forgive you for tricking me into revealing things. I won't hear your excuses. That's it. He continues, I'm going to go out and eat with the president, but I will never forgive you. If you can talk one-on-one with me, I'll listen, because if this was a blunder by you, it's over. Do something thoroughly when the time comes to do it. So now we're a lot of us that are looking at this and say, okay, shit, this is not a work, because they never referred to Gedo as being the booker, having any kind of power, any deciding power in any of the matches. That just doesn't happen. Kayfabe is still important. So at this point, I'm like, this is a shoot, and we are shooting live, and we can infer throughout all of this that Kikuchi is part of this cheaters gang. And to wrap this up, we're going to go back to the flagship report. That, look, there's reportedly some heat on Ibushi for, hanging out the dirty laundry, right? Putting it out there in public instead of taking it up with management, Bushiroad, right? But Ibushi, his main sentiment in all of this is the inconsistent enforcement, and I'm quoting the report here, the inconsistent enforcement of what he perceives as double standards and unfair treatment due to their history of not getting along. That is the cause of everything that's been going on here and why Kota Ibushi is losing it. I don't think it's a work. I think that all of this is real, and it's very, very real, and it could have some very, very serious implications for people in management if Ibushi keeps going and leaking, because this story is not over. This is not over. And Ibushi is really don't forget, Ibushi wrestled the majority of his career without any contract, without sitting down and signing any paper. He's freelanced everywhere. New Japan was the first place that he signed a contract with, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But he's wrestled the majority of his career without a contract. He's the guy who went to wrestle in the Cruiserweight Classic, and WWE said, we'd like you to wrestle with us. We'd like you to wrestle for us. Kota Ibushi was like, great, let's do it. And they were like, here, sign this contract. He's like, I'm not signing a contract. And they said, well, you're not wrestling here. And he's fine, I'll go wrestle somewhere else. That's who he is. He's at a point where, like, he's always been a lone wolf doing his own thing. He didn't come up in the dojo system. He did things his own way. And he's doing things his own way right here. This is consistent with what we know of Ibushi, but like I said, there is absolutely no way this is a work. This is not a work anymore, and this is a developing story. It could get ugly. Will things smooth over? Maybe. Ibushi's mentioned a few times that he might be retiring. Could be. I think he's at a point where he's like, he's just had enough, and he just wants to do what whatever he feels like doing. And it might be, I mean, he's up there in age too. He's not 32. He's not 22. He's pushing 40. I've had people say, oh, will this impact the Forbidden Door? And I don't know. Probably not. Outside the fact that maybe we might not see Kota Ibushi on the card. That's probably it.